Up and welcome back to the channel, and welcome to my bomb site of a garage where I keep my 3 bikes. Now recently quite a few of you asked if I do a quick video showing you how I keep my 3 bikes so immaculate, even though I do run them through winter and even though they are stored in this rather sweaty garage from time to time. So if you're interested in some of the secrets of keeping your bike pristine even if you ride it year round, then stick around and I'll show you exactly how I go about achieving that task. So then, within the last couple of days, I've had these 2 bikes, the Moto Guzzi V7 and the Honda SE1300 Pan-European. I've had them out in some rather grotty weather. There's still a bit of salt on the road, and naughty, both bikes have been away for a couple of days without being cleaned. Ordinarily I would do it straight after the ride, and that's really what I would recommend that you do if you ride out through the winter and accrue any amount of detritus on the bike. But anyway, a couple of days should be the maximum that you leave it, so let's crack on now and I'll show you how I go about bringing these bikes back to showroom condition. Let's crack on. Right then, so here's my Honda ST1300 Pan-European and my Moto Guzzi V7, and it's these 2 bikes that have been out for the last couple of days in some, shall we say, rather dirty weather. Certainly in terms of the amount of salt and detritus on the road. And to my eternal shame, I put them back in the garage for a couple of days. Ordinarily, what I do, and absolutely what you should do, particularly if you ride through winter, is as soon as you get the bike back, do what I'm about to do now. But anyway, it's been a couple of days, but that should be about the maximum. No longer really, particularly if you're putting the bike away in a garage. So let's crack on now and I'll show you how I go about bringing these 2 bikes back to showroom condition. The Super Meteor's there in the garage, that hasn't been out in any sort of weather for the last couple of months anyway, so that's nice and pristine. So let's bring these 2 bikes back up to her standard. Off we go. Right, so first off then, before we apply any sort of products, it's going to go mad in a minute. I'm going to give both bikes a rinse over. Now, not on high pressure. One thing you should never do is take a pressure washer on high setting to a motorcycle. Don't do it. You can blast grease out of the bearings and cause all sorts of problems for the future. You need it on a sort of medium setting. So the setting that you have it on, that setting for cleaning your patio, thus is not the setting you need to rinse your bikes off. So before we apply any products, about thus will be fine. So the next thing I do is I use a muck off. You don't have to use muck off. Seems to be a bit of an industry standard, does this here pink stuff. A bit legendary in motorcycle cleaning history. There are other makes obviously available that may well do the job just as well, but this is what I've got at the moment, and I'm actually going to put it into a foaming attachment for the pressure washer. Bit more. Great bit of kit these. You don't have to use these, of course. You can use the ordinary sort of spray bottle that you get usually with this sort of cleaner. But we're going to put this on now just to loosen up any remaining dirt that's escaped the rinsing process. So next job then, take this here standard small paintbrush to get into all the little nadgery bits, give that muck off or whatever it is you're using a bit of a stir with your brush, and make sure it dislodges all of the muck. Next job then, once you've sort of agitated those little nooks and crannies to get everything loose, left the rest of the stuff a bit of time to loosen the rest of the muck off, then you can get back to your rinsing, and make sure that you rinse also well into those brake pads, because that's where the salt tends to linger, and I'll just show you how we make sure that that's then dried out thoroughly. So yeah, let's get off with a quick rinse, and again modest pressure. Right, and for drying purposes, pet dryer or bike dryer. You can buy a dedicated bike dryer. These tend to be cheaper, and I've found that they are just as good. So you've got controls for heat and controls for power. I have it on full power and full heat, and it just gets used for the bikes, not for him. Okay, so that process, just the drying process with the bike dryer there, the pet dryer. For these 2 bikes, that's taken about an hour and a half just for that part of the exercise. So it just goes to show how thorough you've got to be and how clever water is at hiding in every corner of the bike. To finish off, it's a good idea to start the engine up and let it run, and that'll make sure every little bit of moisture that's hiding anywhere near the internals dries off. But I did tell you a little trick to make sure you've got the cleaning of the brake pads spot on, and that is to use a bit of brake cleaner. So we'll do that now. Yep, so standard brake cleaner, and just give it a blast in between the pads and discs, and that'll make sure you expel any remaining moisture and prevent any corrosion and sticking. Okay, so one of the other things I do is every exposed area, and by that I mean nuts and bolts and little cappings and what have you, bracketry, that sort of thing, basically that's not painted over. I probably 2 or 3 times over the winter I get some of this XCP. You can use something like ACF 50 if you prefer, but this seems to be the best of the bunch. XCP Professional Rust Blocker, and what I do is I spray a bit into the cap there and just get a bog standard artist's brush, and I meticulously go around every single exposed nut, bolt, bracket, bit of metal, thus on all 3 of my bikes. So it takes quite a while, but once you've done it you can be sure that you're not going to get corrosion on those particularly vulnerable areas that always seem to be the first to go through winter, don't they? So yeah, so get snappy with your XCP or similar, your artist brush, and just go make sure that you dab some of this here stuff on every one of these bolts. It's pretty adhesive stuff is this, so you'll probably find that if you do 2 or 3 washes it doesn't come off. But what I don't do with this stuff, because it is so thick and gloopy, I don't spray it over everything that I might want to protect. So I'll show you what I do with the rest of the bike now, with the exception of the paintwork, what I do with the rest of the bike now to protect it. Right, so for the rest of the bike now, it's important that you do this after every wash. So this is fairly labour intensive. It's not like ACF 50 and XCP and other protection coats that you can use that will withstand 1 or 2 washes. This stuff, GT85 maintenance spray, this washes off every time, so you've got to reapply it, but it's cheap enough with this stuff. I mean, I got I think half a dozen tins at about £2.50 per tin of this here stuff, and all I do is I just make sure everything that's exposed gets a good dollop of the old GT85. And what I find is that provided you reapply it after every wash, it gives you all the protection you need, both when you go out on the bike and when you put it away in the garage for storage for any length of time. So yeah, GT85, there are others of course out, the WD-40 and 1 or 2 more expensive brands than this, like Silcoline Pro Prep, but they all basically do the same job, and provided you're prepared to reapply it every time you've washed the bike, this will help enormously, and certainly doesn't stick to the bike and gum it up and attract dirt in the way that XCP and ACF 50 and all of those do when you spray them on these particular components on the bike. So GT85 or similar for this job. Now for plastics, would you believe I use some old expired ACF 50 that I've had for years, and I wouldn't trust ACF 50 this old particularly to offer much corrosion protection, but it's really good for bringing up your plastics. And I find particularly on the Pan-European, which has got a lot of these plastic mouldings like these actually go over the crash bars. There are crash bars underneath here. But I find that if you apply ACF 50 to the plastics, you get a very nice shiny finish to it, and just let it soak in and then give it a good buffing off with a clean cloth afterwards, and it absolutely works a treat. So I just keep a cloth soaked in this stuff kicking about in the garage, and every time I clean the bikes I give the plastics a run over with some old ACF 50. Works a treat. Right, nearly there. So next job then, before you apply any wax or final coating, if you want your paintwork to look pristine, because it will tarnish and get micro scratching, you need to apply a proper polish, not a full-blown rubbing compound at this stage, not routinely, but I use this Ferroclay G10, and G10 is a finishing compound. It's a fine polish. The G3 is a more abrasive polish that you would use before this, but you wouldn't use that routinely, I would suggest. But I find this really gives a nice deep finish to the paintwork, ready for a final coat of wax. So let's get some of the old G10 on. I use a polishing pad soaked in water, so you need a fairly damp cloth or a fairly damp polishing pad, and just give it a good old polish with this stuff, and then wipe it off with a clean cloth. Finally, and most importantly, a last protective coat of a really good quality Carnauba wax. I use either Built Hambers double wax or this Maguire's Gold Plus. Right, okay, hope that was of some interest to you. That's taken me just shy of 5 hours for 2 bikes. And although they were pretty dirty, they weren't that dirty. So it just goes to show how much effort you need to put in, particularly at this time of year, to keep your bikes in pristine condition. But it can be done. Now, of course, you don't have to absolutely follow the exact same process that I follow, nor do you have to use the same products. But if you follow the general principles, then you can be sure your bikes will be in pristine condition the year round.